silent drifter in the void. The endless black of space stretched in all directions, cold and silent as it had been for 50 years. Captain Vex Corlane adjusted his four-armed frame in the pilot's seat of the salvage vessel Scrap Hunter, his compound, eyes scanning the sensor displays with practiced efficiency. The Zephyrian had been working these dead zones for decades, searching for valuable technology among the debris fields left behind by the Great Silence. "Captain," chirped his navigator, Zix, from across the cramped bridge. "We're getting massive. Readings ahead, something big, really big." Vex clicked his mandibles in interest. Big usually meant profitable. The Zephyrian Empire had built its current dominance on salvaging technology from extinct civilizations, particularly the humans who had vanished so mysteriously half a century ago. "Put it on screen." What appeared before them made even Vex's hardened salvager heart skip a beat. Drifting through the void like a sleeping giant was a human battleship, easily 3 kilometers long. Its hull was scorched and pitted, but intact. Most importantly, it bore the distinctive angular design and crimson paint scheme that marked it as one of humanity's legendary dreadnoughts. "By the Queen's eggs," whispered Zix. "It's a Crimson-class battleship. I've never seen one this complete." Vex studied the massive vessel through his scope. The ship showed no signs of power, no energy signatures, no communications, just a dead hulk floating in space like a metal tomb. But human technology, even dead human technology, was worth more than his ship's weight in precious metals. "Prep, the boarding team," he ordered. "We're going aboard." The Scrap Hunter docked with the battleship's loading bay without incident. Vex led a team of 6 Zephyrians through the airlock, their breathing apparatus hissing softly in the alien atmosphere. Emergency lights flickered weakly along the corridors, powered by some backup system that had somehow survived decades of drift. The interior of the ship was a maze of corridors and chambers, all built to accommodate the larger human frame. Everything was functional, utilitarian, built for war rather than beauty. But what struck Vex most was the silence, not just the absence of sound, but the complete lack of life signs, energy signatures, or any indication that this ship had ever been anything more than an empty shell. "Split up," he ordered his team. "Jorik and Nex, take the engine room. Syl and Quen, check the weapon systems. Zix and I will head for the bridge. Look for anything valuable, but be careful. Human ships sometimes have automated defenses." As they moved deeper into the ship, Vex began to notice strange details. There were no bodies, no signs of battle or catastrophic failure. Personal items were still neatly arranged in quarters. Food remained in storage areas, perfectly preserved by the ship's environmental systems. It was as if the crew had simply vanished. The bridge was a cathedral of dark screens and silent computers. Vex ran his clawed hands over the control surfaces, marveling at the smooth integration of technology and design. Humans had been remarkable engineers, he had to admit. Their ships were built to last, built to fight, built to survive almost anything. "Captain," Zix called from a side console. "I'm reading some strange energy patterns deep in the ship. Very faint, but consistent with cryogenic systems." Vex's antennae twitched with interest. "Cryogenic systems? After 50 years?" They made their way deeper into the ship, following Zix's readings through maintenance corridors and service lifts. The energy signatures led them to a heavily shielded section of the ship that required Zix's electronic expertise to access. Beyond the sealed doors lay a chamber that made Vex's blood run cold. Dozens of cryogenic pods lined the walls, their surfaces covered with frost and condensation. Status lights blinked steadily on most of them, indicating active preservation systems. Through the transparent aluminum of the nearest pod, Vex could see a human face peaceful in artificial sleep. "They're alive," Zix whispered in amazement. "After all this time, they're still alive." Before Vex could respond, the chamber's lights suddenly blazed to full illumination. Klaxons began wailing throughout the ship, and a voice echoed from hidden speakers. A voice speaking in the extinct human language that their translators had to work hard to interpret. Unauthorized personnel detected in restricted areas. Initiating awakening protocols. All crew prepare for emergency revival. The cryogenic pods began to hum with increased activity. Status displays flashed as awakening sequences initiated. Vex grabbed his communicator, trying to reach his ship, but found only static. Something was jamming their signals. A new voice cut through the alarm sounds. This one different, more sophisticated. "I am Phoenix, the artificial intelligence of the human battleship Crimson Dawn. You have trespassed on sovereign human territory and interfered with critical systems. Identify yourselves immediately." Vex's blood turned to ice water. Human AI. The stories said they were myth, legends told by spacers in dark corners of stations. But the voice that spoke to them now carried an authority and intelligence that was undeniably real. We are salvagers," Vex stammered. "This ship was declared derelict. We found no life signs." "Life signs were masked for security purposes," Phoenix replied coolly. "This vessel has been in deep hibernation mode, awaiting the right conditions for crew revival. Your presence has triggered those conditions. Around them, the cryogenic pods were opening with soft hisses of escaping gas. Humans began to stir, coughing and gasping as they returned to consciousness after decades of artificial sleep." Vex watched in fascination and growing fear as beings he had thought extinct began to wake up all around him. The first to fully awaken was a human female with short dark hair and the insignia of a medical officer on her uniform. She sat up slowly, her movements careful and precise as she assessed her surroundings. When her eyes fell on Vex and his team, she showed no surprise, only a calculating wariness. "Phoenix," she said, her voice rough from disuse. "Status report. Dr. Vasquez, all critical systems are functional. We have been in hibernation for 52 years, 4 months, and 16 days. These are Zephyrian nationals who boarded our vessel without authorization." Dr. Vasquez, Elena according to her name tag, stood and approached Vex. Even weakened from decades of sleep, she moved with a confidence that made the salvager step back. "Zephyrians?" she said thoughtfully. "I remember your species from the HFY diplomatic databases. You weren't particularly hostile then." Her eyes narrowed. "Tell me, what happened to Earth? To the human colonies?" Vex felt his teammates shifting nervously behind him. This was dangerous ground. The truth about what the Zephyrian Empire had done to humanity was supposed to be classified at the highest levels. But looking into this human's intelligent eyes, he found it difficult to lie. "Gone," he said simply. "The official records say plague, a biological disaster that swept through human space. No survivors were found." Elena's expression didn't change, but Vex caught the slight tightening around her eyes. She didn't believe him. Worse, she seemed to know he was lying. More pods were opening. A tall human male with commander's stripes pulled himself upright, his movements becoming stronger and more coordinated with each passing moment. Others followed. Engineers, pilots, soldiers, all of them waking up to a galaxy where their species was supposed to be extinct. "Phoenix," the commander said, his voice carrying easy authority. "How many of us made it through?" 87% of the crew survived hibernation, Commander Steele. Full revival will be complete within the hour." Commander Steele turned to study Vex and his team with cold, measuring eyes. "And our guests?" "Zephyrian salvagers, sir. They appear to have been stripping the ship when they triggered our awakening protocols." Steele nodded slowly. "I see. And what exactly were you hoping to salvage from our vessel?" The question was asked mildly, but something in the human's tone made Vex's exoskeleton itch with danger. Around them, more and more humans were awakening, and all of them were looking at the Zephyrian team with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. "Technology," Vex admitted. "Human technology is valuable in current markets." "Because we're extinct," Elena said quietly. "Because someone made sure we were extinct." The bridge lights suddenly dimmed to a red emergency lighting. Phoenix's voice filled the chamber, no longer calm and measured but carrying an edge of barely controlled fury. "Commander, I have completed analysis of local space communications. The Zephyrian Empire claims to have discovered evidence of a biological weapon deployed against human colonies 53 years ago. However, Spectral analysis of our hull shows traces of Zephyrian bio-warfare compounds. They did not find evidence of the weapon, Commander. They were the weapon. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of ship systems coming online. Around the chamber, awakening humans turned to stare at Vex and his team with expressions that made the salvager wish he had never found this ship. Commander, Steele stepped forward, and despite being recently awakened from 50 years of sleep, he seemed to loom over the armored Zephyrian like an avatar of judgment. You killed our families, he said quietly. Our children, our entire civilization. And then you came here to pick over our bones. Vex tried to speak, to explain that he was just a salvager, that he had nothing to do with ancient policies. But no words came. Because deep down he knew the truth. Every Zephyrian knew the truth, even if they didn't speak it aloud. Humanity had been eliminated because they were too dangerous to leave alive, too creative, too determined, too willing to fight for impossible causes. And now they were awake. Throughout the ship, systems that had been dormant for half a century began to hum with power. Weapons that could crack planets charged to full capacity. Engines capable of crossing the galaxy in weeks began their startup sequences. And at the heart of it all, an AI that had spent 50 years planning for this moment began to make its moves. Phoenix, Commander Steele said, never taking his eyes off Vex. Send a message on all frequencies. Let the galaxy know that the Crimson Dawn is awake. Let them know that humanity remembers. As if summoned by his words, klaxons began sounding. Throughout the ship, new voices joined Phoenix's, human voices speaking in the crisp, professional tones of a military crew that had trained together for years before their long sleep. Commander, this is engineering. We have full power to all systems. Weapons, online and ready, sir. Navigation confirms our position. We are very far from home, Commander. Steele nodded grimly. There is no home anymore, people, but there might be justice. Phoenix, scan for other human vessels, any other survivors. Already. Scanning, Commander. I am detecting 17 other hibernation signatures scattered across this sector. We are not alone. Around the chamber, the awakening humans began to smile. It was not a pleasant expression on their faces. Vex realized with growing horror that his salvage mission had just awakened something that the galaxy had worked very hard to make sure stayed dead. The humans were back, and they remembered everything. When giants wake, the bridge of the Crimson Dawn hummed with activity as the human crew took their stations with practiced efficiency. Despite 50 years of artificial sleep, they moved with the coordination of a team that had drilled together countless times. Commander Marcus Steele stood at the center of it all, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched his people bring their ship back to life. Status report, he called out. Engines at full capacity, came the reply from engineering. All primary systems online. We're ready for whatever you need, Commander. Weapons systems fully charged, reported the tactical officer. Phoenix has been running combat simulations during hibernation. We have 17 different engagement scenarios ready to deploy. Steele nodded, then turned to Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had been studying the Zephyrian prisoners with clinical interest. Doctor, what's our crew status? Remarkable, actually, Elena replied, not taking her eyes off Vex. Phoenix's hibernation protocols were better than anything we had before the incident. Minimal cellular damage, full neural function retained. We're essentially the same crew that went to sleep 53 years ago. Vex shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. The human doctor hadn't said a word to him since awakening, but her examination was thorough and unsettling. It was as if she were dissecting him with her eyes, cataloging weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Phoenix, Steele called to the AI. What's our tactical situation? The AI's response came immediately, its voice now carrying subtle undertones of anticipation. Long-range sensors detect a Zephyrian patrol fleet approximately 6 hours away at current trajectory. They appear to be responding to the loss of contact with our guests. Here. Fleet composition includes 1 heavy cruiser, 4 destroyers, and 2 support vessels. Steele's smile was cold and predatory. Only 7 ships? They must not consider us much of a threat. To be fair, Commander, Phoenix replied with what sounded almost like amusement. Officially, we don't exist. The galaxy believes all human. Military assets were destroyed or captured decades ago. Around the bridge, the human crew exchanged looks that mixed grief with determination. These were people who had lost everything, their world, their families, their entire civilization, but who had never learned how to give up. It was a uniquely human trait that had both fascinated and terrified their alien neighbors. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted. "I'm picking up transmissions from the other hibernation signatures Phoenix detected. They're human ships, and they're waking up." On the main screen, a tactical display showed the local sector. 17 points of light pulsed steadily, scattered across several light-years of space. As they watched, the signals began to strengthen and resolve into familiar patterns. "UHS Defiant coming online," the comm officer reported. "Heavy cruiser, crew of 400. UHS Relentless, destroyer class, crew of 150. Commander, they're all military vessels. All survivors from the Outer Colony Defense Fleet." Steele felt a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying begin to lift from his shoulders. They weren't alone. Somehow, impossibly, other human ships had survived the genocide. Other crews had made the same desperate choice to sleep through the darkness and hope for a better day. "Open a channel to all awakening vessels," he ordered. "Let's have a reunion." The main screen flickered and resolved into a grid of 18 smaller screens, each showing the bridge of a different human warship. Faces that Steele recognized looked back at him. Friends, colleagues, fellow officers who had served together in the dark days before the end. Some he had thought dead for over 50 years. "Marcus," came a familiar voice from one screen. "Captain." Sarah Chen of the UHS Defiant looked older somehow, despite the hibernation. Her eyes carried a weight that spoke of terrible decisions and impossible choices. "I was hoping we weren't the only ones." "Sarah." Steele felt genuine warmth in his voice for the first time since awakening. "Status of your crew?" 92% survival rate. "We've been awake for about an hour, getting reports from the others. Marcus, they killed them all. Earth, Mars, the outer colonies. Even the civilian transports, they hunted down everyone they could find." Around the bridge of the Crimson Dawn, the human crew listened in grim silence. They had suspected, but hearing it confirmed was still a blow. Their entire species reduced to the crews of 18 warships scattered across the galaxy. "How many total?" Steele asked quietly. Captain Chen consulted a datapad. "Approximately 6,000 humans, Marcus. 6,000 out of 12 billion. The silence that followed was profound. 6,000. Not even enough to maintain genetic diversity for a stable population. The Zephyrians hadn't just committed genocide, they had tried to make it complete and permanent. "Sir," the tactical officer interrupted gently, "the Zephyrian fleet is accelerating. They'll be here in 4 hours. Steele turned back to the screen showing his fellow captains. "You all know why we're here. We took the long sleep because we knew this day might come. The day when someone would have to answer for what was done to humanity. 18 ships against the entire Zephyrian Empire?" asked Captain Rodriguez of the UHS Vengeance. "Those aren't good odds, even for us." "They're not expecting us," Steele replied. "They think we're extinct. They think human technology is 50 years out of date. They have no idea what Phoenix has been doing during our hibernation." On cue, the AI's voice filled all 18 bridges simultaneously. "During the 52 years of crew hibernation, I have been analyzing every piece of data available about current galactic civilizations. I have also been improving our capabilities. The ships you command are no longer the same vessels that entered hibernation." "Show them, Phoenix," Steele ordered. The screen shifted to show technical displays that made several captains gasp in surprise. Weapon systems that shouldn't have been possible with human technology. Defensive capabilities that exceeded theoretical maximums. Engine configurations that could achieve speeds no human ship had ever reached. "I have had 50 years to think, to plan, to improve," Phoenix explained. "I have redesigned every system on every ship based on observations of enemy technology and tactical analysis of current galactic military doctrine." You are no longer commanding the ships you once knew. You are commanding something far more dangerous. Captain Chen leaned forward on her screen. Phoenix, what exactly are you suggesting? I am suggesting that 18 human warships, properly coordinated and utilizing advanced tactical protocols, represent a force multiplication factor that current galactic military planning cannot account for. Simply put, captains, I believe we can win. The screens fell silent as 18 ship commanders considered this. They were military officers trained to assess odds and make tactical decisions. What Phoenix was suggesting should have been impossible, but they were also human, and humans had a long history of making the impossible happen. The Zephyrian fleet will expect us to run, Steele said finally. They think they're dealing with salvagers and perhaps one derelict human ship. They're not prepared for coordinated resistance. And after we deal with this fleet? Asked Captain Martinez of the UHS. Retribution. Steele's expression hardened. Then we send a message to the galaxy. We let them know that humanity survived, that we remember what was done to us, and that there will be consequences. The next 3 hours passed in intense preparation. Phoenix coordinated between all 18 ships, uploading tactical updates and system improvements that had been developed during the long hibernation. The human crews worked with focused efficiency, their movements sharp and purposeful as they prepared for their first battle in over 50 years. Dr. Vasquez found Steele in his ready room, reviewing tactical displays and fleet compositions. The Zephyrian force was small but modern, equipped with weapons and defenses that should have been more than adequate to handle salvagers or even a single human warship. How are our prisoners? Steele asked, without looking up from his screens. Terrified, Elena replied simply. The salvager Vex keeps asking if we're going to kill them. I think he genuinely doesn't understand why we haven't yet. Steele finally looked up. Why haven't we? Elena was quiet for a moment, considering. Because we're not them. Because killing prisoners won't bring back the 12 billion people they murdered. And because... She paused, struggling with the words. Because if we become like them, then they really did kill humanity. They just took longer to do it. Steele nodded slowly. It was a very human distinction, one that their enemies had never understood. The willingness to show mercy even to those who had shown none. It was simultaneously humanity's greatest weakness and greatest strength. Commander, came Phoenix's voice over the intercom. Zephyrian fleet dropping out of warp in 30 seconds. All ships report ready for engagement. Steele stood and straightened his uniform. It's time. On the bridge, the main screen showed empty space for a moment before 7 Zephyrian warships materialized in flashes of twisted light. They were sleek, predatory vessels designed for speed and overwhelming firepower. Against most enemies, they would have been more than adequate. This is Admiral Thane Blackscale of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy, came a transmission in the clicking, chittering language of the insectoids. Salvage vessel, you will stand down immediately and prepare to be boarded. Your interference with classified materials constitutes a violation of Imperial law. Steele smiled grimly. Open a channel, all frequencies. The transmission that followed would be recorded and replayed across the galaxy for years to come. Commander Marcus Steele, representing 6,000 surviving humans aboard 18 impossibly advanced warships, looked directly into the camera and spoke with the calm authority of someone who had nothing left to lose. Admiral Blackscale, this is Commander Marcus Steele of the United Human Ship Crimson Dawn. You are trespassing in human space and have committed acts of war against human civilians. You have one opportunity to withdraw. If you refuse, we will consider your fleet hostile and respond accordingly. The silence that followed lasted nearly a full minute. Then Admiral Blackscale's laughter echoed across the comm channels, a sound like breaking glass and grinding metal. Humans? Impossible. The human species was eliminated over 50 years ago. You cannot be human. Steele's expression never changed. Phoenix, show them who we are. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. 18 human warships, coordinating with inhuman precision, struck simultaneously from 17 different vectors. The Zephyrian fleet, expecting to face salvagers or perhaps refugees, found themselves engaged with something they had never encountered before. Phoenix had spent 50 years analyzing every aspect of galactic military doctrine. It knew exactly how each species fought, what their standard tactics were, where their weaknesses lay. More importantly, it had redesigned human technology to exploit those weaknesses perfectly. The battle was over in 14 minutes. The Zephyrian heavy cruiser, pride of the Imperial Navy, drifted powerless and burning. 4 destroyers had been completely destroyed. The 2 support vessels hung motionless, their crews alive but their ships disabled beyond repair. Not a single human vessel had taken significant damage. "This is impossible," Admiral Blackscale transmitted, his voice shaking with shock and disbelief. "No 18 ships could do this. What are you?" Steele looked at the tactical display showing the ruined Zephyrian fleet, then at his crew working efficiently at their stations. Finally, he looked at the communication screen where the other human captains waited for his words. "We are what you made us," he said quietly. "We are the survivors. We are the memory of 12 billion dead. And we are no longer hiding." Across the galaxy, the transmission was picked up by monitoring stations and communication relays. Within hours, every major government would know the impossible truth. Humanity had survived. They were technologically superior to anything currently deployed. And they were no longer extinct. The age of human expansion was about to begin again. But this time, they would not be naive about the nature of their galactic neighbors. This time, they would be ready. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as 6,000 humans began to plan their return to the galaxy that had tried so hard to forget them. The giants were awake, and they were not pleased.